All right, well, this is Ted. I'm on the call. I am just getting into the actual web meeting now, and Brian's on the call as well, so we're both here today. How do we want to do this?
Either way, if you'd like to conduct, go right ahead.
Well, I'm still getting into the meeting, so I just need a minute. I don't, just give me a minute, but if you want to start, if you're already in, go ahead.
Maybe we'll take,
Jeff,
if it's
Jeff
possible,
Maskin is still there.
give everyone a chance to grab a cup of coffee.
Ted and Brian, do you mind if I do a roll call real quick to make sure we have quorum for this meeting?
Sure.
Why don't we do a quick bio break and then let's do the roll call after that.
Oh, come on.
Gonna break?
Well, it's 11:08 right now. Do we want to start at 11:12? How's that? 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Okay.
Run, Forrest.
I went to fly the helicopter today, and my hangar door is broken, so had to cancel the flight.
Ted, Brian, and everyone on the call, please be advised that we are still on YouTube.
Okay, I'm going to get into that now.
It's crazy. These Zoom meetings eat up battery life on computers significantly. Usually I can get through a whole day without charging, but finding myself in so many Zooms that I'm plugged in all the time.
Yeah, I had my iPad in one spot unplugged in. I had to plug it in, move it, and plug it in because it's just running out.
Yeah.
Okay, is Colin there?
Yes.
Yes, I am, sir.
Who are we drafting?
You have to trade up to get one of the receivers.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we can sit at 21 and get who we need.
No. So either you're gonna trade up or you're gonna drop down.
Trade up.
Colin, are you going to help the Eagles with their Zoom work?
I've been watching the last couple nights. I've been watching the old drafts. They've been replaying them, and there's nothing on TV. So I appreciated the 1989 sitting in a conference room in a hotel with a podium and a guy sitting there with a phone, and how much it's changed over the last, what is it now, 30 years?
Who do we draft in '89? Those are Buddy Ryan days.
Derek Thomas, I know, went to the Chiefs. That's the kid I caught.
I can't wait for tonight's draft when some general manager is yelling at his kid to get off the Wi-Fi. That's just going to be funny as hell.
There's going to be, we can count on a barking dog for sure, too.
Oh, yeah.
You guys will probably hear one of my dogs lose it in a minute here when the mail shows up.
Well, frankly, I like dogs more than I do most adults, so that doesn't bother me at all.
Hey, Matt, I have you a shirt from Atlanta when I see you again.
That's awesome. I was, I guess Monday this week was supposed to be Boston, and I was totally bummed out to see that they had absolutely perfect weather.
Yeah, after last year, 2 years ago, rather.
Well, the Boston Marathon sent out pictures of previous years, and so I got to see my dog look in 2018, and God, that was terrible.
That was a bad day.
It was real bad.
Okay, so 11:12. How we looking, Ted?
Yep, Brian's back on, so we'll go ahead and start the meeting. I guess I'll talk. So, yeah, welcome, and let's see, public comment? I guess we'll...
Why don't you take the roll?
From the public on?
Why don't you take the roll?
Take roll. Okay, so Vec, go ahead and take the roll then, I'm sorry.
Hi, Ted. Thank you. Yes. So Brian Dames,
Here.
Ted Rosenberger,
Here,
Chuck Diacon,
Here.
Larry Hamburger. I thought I saw him on there. And Jeff Matskin.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum, and Ted, just so you know, we have not received any public comment for this meeting.
okay, terrific. So we can move on for that. Next, we just need to get approval for the meeting minutes. Any feedback on the previous meeting minutes? I have none.
None?
Okay. Then I'll make a motion to have the meeting minutes approved. Any second? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting minutes approved. I just have a few discussion items on the, obviously there's been profound impacts on COVID. And so I see they're pulling up a presentation here on what's been done to the FBOs. We appreciate the sneeze guards there now, but who wants to give this presentation?
Ed, I'll take that. I can walk through that quick.
Okay, thank you.
So sure. So on that first slide, you'll just see there, I think as we're doing pretty much everywhere on the airport, following a lot of the same procedures at the FBO and at the 2 GA airports. So, cleaning and disinfecting constantly, pretty much. We've installed sneeze guards where they work. So we have them at Queen City and ABE. There's really no way to put one at Braden the way the layout is. So at this point, we have not put them there. Lots of hand sanitizer. We took some Collins vodka and used that for hand sanitizer as well where we needed it. So using that, definitely making sure we have that out at all facilities. And then we are definitely encouraging at this point, everybody to wear masks, which pretty much everyone is when they're not able to social distance. So, excuse me. And just, I want to go through the fuel sales a little bit. Obviously, this is having an effect on our fuel sales. Interestingly, in March at ABE, we were actually up year over year on our fuel sales. We would have had an absolutely phenomenal month had we had a full month, I think, but still year over year increase, driven mostly by our cargo operators, and actually our general aviation, the contract fuel sales on the GA side were very strong. I think what we saw kind of at the very beginning of this pandemic is that GA actually activity increased a little bit early on when folks were kind of getting away from the airliners and getting on private aircraft. Then avgas, definitely lagging a little bit in March, and then month to date in April, we're way behind on avgas at ABE. Attributed mostly the flight school is not operational, which you'll see a little later on. But so we can go to the next one, so but. Queen City also Jet A fuel increase in March over last year, so good there. Sure, Ted, you probably helped with that a little bit. The other really big driver there is we are the medevac from Guy Valley Hospital fueling at Queen City, so that helped immensely with that the fuel sales there on the jet side.
Yeah, although I was speaking with a medevac pilot friend of mine the other day, and he said that their missions are actually way down. That they're sitting around a lot. So I would imagine there'd be a hit to that as well. I think, patient transfers and things like that aren't happening too much right now. So, and there's not as many car accidents, so not as many need for urgent medical flights.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see that in the April numbers. Again, this was, sort of month to date, a couple of days ago. You can see we're way down in April. So Definitely seeing that happen. Same thing again with avgas being down. Now the flight school at Queen City is still operating limited. So again, we can talk about that in a bit, but definitely seeing the impact there. So if we can flip over to the next one, so at Braden, a lot of the same. Obviously, jet fuel sales at Braden are never super robust, but down a little bit last month. Up this month, but we had none last year, so it was kind of hard to be down, I guess. So, but on the avgas side, you'll see it. We had a really good March on avgas. I'd say again attributed a lot with the flight school that was going on down there. Down in April, and again the flight school is no longer operating, so that's definitely having a profound effect on those sales as well. So I think we'll continue to see that until things get back to operational. And last one, and then just a quick recap of what is going on with our operators, each one. So our maintenance operators at all three fields are, operating pretty much as normal, as well as our avionics shop at ABE. Talking to some of them, they have a fair amount of work to keep them busy, at least until May, but we'll see what kind of happens from then on as things start to, continue to slow down, and whether they're able to continue to maintain sort of normal operations. Ace Pilot has suspended all their flight training until further notice. And we're seeing very, very limited charter operations at ABE. Queen City Fly Gateway is conducting one-on-one flight training, but no ground school classes. And again, like I said, the flight training is definitely not sort of what it normally is, but they're doing a little bit of training. And no flight training going on at Braden at this point in time either. They've also suspended until further notice. So that's all I had on that. I'm certainly happy to take any questions.
Fuel prices across the industry, given the oil glut combined with the lack of demand, have plummeted unbelievably. I have an app that shows me my contract fuel pricing, every airport in the country kind of at a glance. And there are airports selling jet fuel as little as $1.50 a gallon at this time. I realize that our fuel sales are all the income we have, but could you speak a little bit, Darren, to what is driving fuel prices right now? And, on the 100 low lead side, is there anything we could do to incentivize a little bit of flying, or is it, what's driving our fuel prices right now? They're a little higher. I'm not saying we should lower them, but they are a little higher than, some GA airports, which have pretty much just pulled the rug out from under fuel prices.
Sure. I mean, we certainly can look at lowering those under low lead prices. I can tell you most of what's, the way we typically price our fuel is based on our cost plus, and when we purchased this, it was before, a lot of this, we're not moving the inventory very quickly. So we're not moving into that, cheap inventory as far as purchase goes. But yeah, if we also take a look at the market when we do this. So if we need to adjust these down a little bit, and honestly, probably just give away a little bit of our margin to continue to move some fuel, it's something we can look at. But, I know you mentioned your contract prices. Obviously, those are totally out of our control. We're still getting our same into plane on contract, but that's really based on what the cost of fuel is. So.
Yeah. Well, even retail prices are just shockingly low around the country. I mean.
Yeah. No, I've seen that in places too.
I've never seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen it too. But like I said, a lot of it for us is really just the inventory. The only thing that we're really moving inventory on is Jet A at ABE. That's the only thing that we're still kind of turning inventory over, and not nearly as quickly as we normally do. But, the inventories everywhere else, we're kind of working off a bit of a higher cost inventory still, but something we'll look at.
One thing that is part of the CARES Act that a lot of people didn't realize, and I had one question, was that for charter operators like myself, normally I would have to charge an additional 7.5% federal excise tax on top of a cost of a charter flight. So if a charter flight is $10,000, I'd have to charge an additional $750 and send that to the feds, and that's part of what funds the airport system and everything. Well, they waived that for the remainder of 2020. So charter operators do not have to collect any of that 7.5% anymore. And I know it's related to the fuel tax as well. And my question was, has the fuel tax that's built into the cost of a gallon of jet fuel, has that been eliminated from the fuel itself as well?
We have, there was not an elimination of excise tax on fuel at this point in time. That is still going. I know there were, I think actually some of the airlines have proposed that. I think that's probably unlikely just because so much of the funding depends on that fuel tax at this point in time. So it's hard to say, but that at this point it has not.
But the FET that's built into ticket sales as well, like that per seat charge and everything, that's been eliminated. So airline flights would be even cheaper right now, but obviously nobody's flying. I mean, I haven't personally done a charter flight in a month now. I had a sort of a wave of getting people home kinds of flights, or moving some elderly people, out of areas and getting them to their summer homes, and then it just died, and it hasn't come back.
And that's what we've seen too with most of our charter operators. I mean, again, looking at things throughout the industry, it's we may see some of that start to come back more quickly than the airline travel does as well. I think for the same reasons it kind of hung on a little longer past the airline travel, but still remains to be seen when and how much. Right.
So there's definitely, everybody's lowering their prices and everything, but there's zero demand, so nobody's going anywhere. So it's tough. Okay. Well, thanks for that update. Any other questions on COVID-19? I mean, lowering fuel prices, if the airport can afford it, it might be a nice thing to do to get, the occasional cooped up pilot to go out and just fly around a little bit. I know quite a few pilots have done solo flights like that. So I encourage you to look at it. But I understand if you can't go crazy because you still got to pay the bills. FBO, new FBO. I know I've mentioned a few times, and you enthusiastically agreed that ABE needs a new FBO. I think it was Brian that added that to the agenda. There's a lot of enthusiasm to amongst board members to actually move that along. And, I guess we just wanted to discuss it. Is that a capital project we could start to really think about getting serious about for the coming years? Because it's everyone agrees that it's sort of desperately needed.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer Ryan if you want to jump in on any of this piece of it. I think, certainly I agree. The facility, would be nice to see it replaced. I just don't know, financially, and if we can justify if there's going to be enough of a return right now to justify it. But something, Ryan, again, if you got anything.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Per conversations we had before, we do have it. I think per our previous conversations, we do have it in our master plan, in our near term. So the first 5-year, projects. Again, it just depends on how it falls in the priority list with some of the others. But I know we did have I'd have to go back and look, but I know we had a very high level cost estimate that we put in there. And I want to say it was anywhere between 18 and 20 million bucks. But again, I think we could obviously refine that as we get, more involved with it. But yeah, I definitely agree. It would be a good addition for what we've talked about. It's just how, what's the best way to move forward, given it is in our plan, with some of the other projects as well. And I think as a reminder, I believe it was in basically that corner quadrant next to the current fueling shack in the corner there was really the goal. So almost have it like to overview all of the transient hangar apron space.
I'm not sure how that 18 to 20 million is allocated, but to me, just having a separate FBO rather than a very fancy FBO, if there was a shorter term, separate FBO that's a $3 or $5 million project versus a 10 or 15-year-old plan to do year plan to do some sort of $20 million FBO, I'd certainly be supportive of the shorter term, just getting it separated out and feeling fresh, and even if it's small, just something fresh and nicely appointed that's nothing but an FBO would be very welcome. I don't know how the others feel about that, but and maybe that could be prioritized a little bit more than something that's just backbreaking in terms of budget. And also with the infrastructure bills that might be coming from the federal government, that might be a good one to slip in if there are some grants coming in the future for infrastructure. That could be a cool one for ABE to do.
Right. No, that makes sense to your point. I'd have to go back and ask the consultant what they were assuming with that price, because it does seem pretty high for what you're probably referring to on the somewhat the simpler scale. But even then, I think it's even the discussion at the previous meeting. I think we'd have to do some initial analysis to get somewhat a concept, which obviously there's some funds there, but just a concept and somewhat of an estimate, and then from there it's just kind of how does it fit in the priority of projects, because again, it was listed. I know we did talk about it as a key project. It's just, again, how does and again, that's part of the discussions with you guys, with the board, and then the committee, is how does it fit in the the overall capital. But yeah, I think, as we talked before, we're talking about renovating the bathrooms in Hangar 7, and basically those have been pushed back as of right now just because of the current financial impacts. But we know it's needed for sure.
Yeah. Well, maybe as we get into future meetings, we could take a look at those that 5-year plan and just sort of have everybody's input and vote, and maybe come up with a priority for each. And maybe this might get bumped near the top and get some momentum. I think that's just what a few people on this committee had mentioned they'd like to see. So let's just look at all the projects. Yeah. Okay. Terrific. And then Windsock at Queen City. I'm not sure how this ended up. As a user of Queen City, I have trouble seeing the windsock sometimes from the pattern. It's not the biggest windsock, but Brian, did you was this from some feedback? I don't remember where this item came from.
It was mainly from you. I haven't flown in there a lot, so I don't know if this is a major item, but I put it in there after one of your emails to me.
Okay. Yeah, I might have brought that up a long time ago. Maybe I'm losing my mind, but yeah, it would be nice to have a bigger, more prominent windsock at Queen City. That's we don't need to belabor it. Were there any thoughts of that from the team, Ryan or Darren? Is that something that's been discussed?
Ted, this is Steve Connors. The current windsock at Braden is a 12-foot windsock. It's the largest. It's the FA size.
At Braden or Queen City?
I'm sorry.
You said Braden.
Queen City. I meant Queen City. I apologize.
Okay.
So it is the large style windsock, and it's centrally located. Do you think it's a lighting thing? Because I know it's lit at night.
Right.
I
well, we can table this for now. Let me talk to the flight school and Brad and some of the people over there, and just see what the common thoughts are about it. It's not a huge deal. I just know that there's some airports that have multiple windsocks at different ends of the field, and it's a lot easier to see. So let's just see if we need additional windsocks or a bigger windsock, but I will follow up on that maybe at the next meeting.
It's Chuck.
Yeah.
I don't fly into Queen City very often, but is there an ASOS at Queen City? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, is it pretty accurate?
An AWAS. Yeah, and that's what I use.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious if they had one.
there is.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
yeah, it's good.
Okay.
But a lot of the flight training and everything they use in the windsock, the windsock is real time as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely had some tailwind experiences.
All right. Well, we close that topic. I didn't have anything else. I'm glad we talked about the COVID situation a little bit from a GA perspective. Any new business?
Say one thing, Ted, Chuck, again, I wanted to bring up. In fact, you and I were up together the other day. We said hi to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And shooting some practice approaches that day, just trying to keep myself from going totally insane. And I was only able to get one approach, and ATC at Allentown told me they weren't staffed sufficiently to handle any further practice approaches. And I was just wondering, from Tom, from your perspective, is that something, should we as pilots be calling over to the line before we go up, just to make sure that if we're going to shoot approaches, they have people there?
Yeah, at this point, that hasn't been an issue. I know yesterday there were some announcements about reduced tower and TRACON hours around the country. I did see, I jumped onto that list very, very quickly. We were not on the list. I do see that Wilkes-Barre, for example, north of us, was on the list for some reduced hours of ATC coverage. So as of right now, I don't see that issue, Chuck, but again, it's very dynamic. So
Okay. I mean, I said to the controller, I said, hey, respectfully, I understand, no problem. But is that something that could be put on a NOTAM if you're going to be short?
yeah.
We should check before we go up and spend $200. And so anyhow, just a note that I had the other day. And then, hey, is this the right time? Secondarily, I wouldn't be doing my job over at Braden if I wouldn't ask the question again, Darren, because I get this all the time. And Brian, I'm sure you as well. And it relates to the, lack of a better term, the little open lean-to, hangars we have out there with 4 or 5 planes, and now thankfully we've got a lot of planes out on the grass, which is a good thing, of course. But I keep getting asked by pilots if we can reduce the price, and I know we had a program in there for a period of, I forget what it was, 6 months or something, that it was kind of subsidized and it went back up to full market price. But it does seem to me, I agree with what I hear from the scuttlebutt, that somewhere between the $400 a month of being a hangar and the whatever we're charging for being on the grass, there could be a lower rate in the event just to try and entice more planes to the lean-to. So that, again, just feedback I get from people. And I know I know you hear it as well, but I wanted to do my job and pass it along.
No, Chuck, I appreciate that. And again, I think it's something we constantly try to look at. I think the one concern we all have with the shelters is we've had many issues, just with the accessibility pieces of it, and honestly, moving aircraft in and out of it. We've had a couple of aircraft damages and things. So as much as I agree, I want to get them filled. I think we need to continue to find a way to fix some of those issues, because it's almost like the more aircraft we're going to put in there at a cheaper rate, and then the cost that we incur. Because, like I said, we've had a couple of different times where we've had aircraft get damaged trying to get them in and out that we then end up paying for. So not that we don't want them full, but I think we have to, we've looked at a couple of different options to try and, obviously paving it would be ideal. That's not going to happen anytime soon, as far as cost goes, but we looked at some other options of things to put in there, and none of them are inexpensive at this point. So I think it's just trying to figure that piece out, but we can definitely, again, I think it's something we'll keep looking at as far as, trying to reduce that rate to get folks in them.
Darren, to follow your line of thought there with respect to money, what's the status or the state of the PennDOT funds for, Pennsylvania funded airports for capital projects? Is that kind of everything on a standstill there? Is the 5-year plan still in effect? What's going on at the Commonwealth level?
Brian, that's for you, I think.
Yeah, Chuck, at this point, we haven't heard any real changes at this point. I know all of our existing grants are still getting reimbursed, but no, I haven't heard anything different at this point.
So I guess the question then would be, is there an opportunity to put another request in, understanding the process that, for some, to Darren's point, for some 2A modified stone and paving to allow better access to the ramps? We don't, get planes stuck in mud and damage them with tractors and so forth.
True. Yeah, I know we did submit kind of for a phased approach or development for hangars down at Braden, for our conversations about breaking up the site work and the pad versus the structure. But yeah, we can always evaluate, even something more cost effective if that could be, something that they would entertain. I think the next cycle opens up, I believe, this fall, but we can confirm that as it gets closer with timing.
Okay, I'd appreciate if you'd look into that, and if we can get a request in for funds and at least get on the schedule to improve access there, that'd be great. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah.
Ed, anybody there?
I'm still here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had myself mute. I was talking.
Ted, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I was talking and had my phone muted. Chuck had also mentioned, to me a few times that he would definitely be interested in, perhaps putting up his own hangar if the airport authority could provide a pad. And given the circumstances in the world and lack of funding and stuff, I'm wondering if that is something that could be maybe moved along in the coming year of getting serious about, for both Queen City and Braden, just having the airport authority do enough of a capital project to just create kind of a base concrete pad, and then encourage owners to complete their own hangars on those pads. But to me, that solves all the drainage and potential intimidating issues of approvals regarding runoff and building taxiways and stuff like that. But then the owners could build their own hangars. Is there any way we might be able to prioritize that in the next year to really look at that seriously? Because there's probably a few takers out there at both airports.
Yeah, I mean, I know that this is Ryan from
sorry, I was waiting to see if he was going to talk or not. So,
I think, kind of like I just mentioned before, in terms of the application we submitted to the state with some of those pieces, I think, again, as things get closer with, whether it's in the fall with the next budget cycle, or if we hear anything from the state of what we previously submitted, last year, it's just, seeing if we can make some of those work in some of those areas based on the other funding we get from the state, or to your point, if there's other commitments from folks to build the hangars on top of a pad that we can get. But without the funding, obviously we'll do what we can, but without the funding, that's always a big component to really make it financially viable, which we always looked at.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's, yeah. Go ahead. Have we specifically proposed that though? Like as a revised sort of an intermediate model? Is that something? And maybe Chuck could speak as a potential, user of that model. What would you like to see, Chuck?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd say we obviously through Tom, Colin, Byron, through everyone's good work, we have a good relationship with the Commonwealth, with PennDOT, and to the extent we can put more projects on their 5-year list for capital improvements over at Braden and support them politically through Pat Brown, Lisa Boscola, Mario Scavella, et cetera, I think it makes sense to do that stuff. From my own selfish perspective, yeah, I'd love to be in a hangar. And I think given the fact, Ted, you went through this exercise, that ultimately you have to turn the improvements over to the authority after a finite period of time. It's a sunk investment. So I think it's fair that if the authority can come up with the pad, as you describe it, and, the tenant puts the hangar up, pays for those capital improvements with the understanding, again, that it's going to revert to the authority down the road, it makes it more palatable. So that's kind of like to see just a little cost exercise. It's what I mentioned a little bit there in executive committee, just to maybe talk to some peer airports that are out there that you see in all the magazines that have just recently built GA hangars and have them out there for lease. Anything from, you know, a 172 up to a King Air, they're out there. I've seen several of them in the magazines, but just to kind of get some feedback on what it really does cost to produce the hangars, and then we can all at the committee put a pretty quick pencil to it. Ted did a great job of that on, you know, on the research he did with Excel for his own hangar when he was looking at it.
Hey Chuck, just a question for you. Do you have a thought on what, you know, if we were to do something like that, what would the lease rate have to be, you know, the ground lease rate or the, you know, the pad, I guess, the lease rate type of thing have to be to make it worth it for you guys to look at?
Well, I think you have to back into that, Darren, to, you know, as I say right now, I'm paying almost, I guess about $400 a month at Braden for the hangar over there. And I've got a great situation. There's 3 planes in the hangar. I'm always up front because I fly a lot. I have no issues with it, but still at the end of the day, it'd be nice to have my own hangar where I can pull my plane out 24/7 and go do my thing. But I think, you know, again, if I put a capitalization rate of 4 or 5% on $400 a month, you know, that buys a $70,000, $80,000 hangar, right? So that's kind of, you have to reverse engineer the math, which is simple to do. It's just a matter of what are the hard costs to go in there, do some basic civil engineering, some site work, some stone, some concrete, you know, rudimentary drainage, and come up with the cost of the hangar, and then back that into the rate and see if it, you know, just see if it pencils. But
yeah,
I just think it'd be helpful. Go ahead, Darren.
No, I just was kind of curious if you had a thought, but that's yeah, something we can certainly look at for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm, as I say, paying $400, I don't want to pay $1,000, right? But
right,
you know, there is a group of pilots out there who would like to have their hangar, and for a lot of different reasons, but it'd just be nice to work off of a pro forma ballpark number of, you know, here's the cost, the hard cost and soft cost of the construction, the hangar, et cetera, and here's you know, the rate that you have to set, ground rate and hangar rate, to make the investment pencil, and then again it reverts whatever the tip term is, 15 years or 20. Yeah, reverts the authority, and we go from there.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, yeah. I couldn't agree more that it's worth looking at. You know, at Queen City, there's 2 hangars that larger planes can fit in, and those are, you know, years of waiting lists for those. So, you know, so for me, if I could get into one of those, it would be worth $1,000 a month for one that a King Air would fit in. So again, if there was a pad and you could put up something even unheated that would simulate that, well, maybe you put up the cash up front and you've locked that in for that many years. So same thing, larger airplane, it could work good. Okay, great. Well, let's try to prioritize that moving forward. And if there's no other new business, we'll adjourn and let everybody get back to their busy days.
Yeah, I just want to echo what was said at the last meeting. You know, for the staff, amazing job keeping us moving forward through these unbelievable times. I mean, glad the airports are open, given what's going on. I appreciate that. So thanks for all the work everyone's doing, and I know we're going to get out the other side of this thing and get back on the horse again. So, but I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chuck.
I agree. Good show.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, have a great day, everybody, and thank you.